This one is by PatrickCc. PETA deserve their failures. I've heard weird stuff about PETA. Like, I don't know if it's just kind of like a semi-scandalous type stuff. Yeah. So let's see what's going on here. In the land of the vegans.
From harm. They call themselves the largest, has built its reputation on protecting animals from harm. They call themselves the largest animal liberation organization in the world. But what most people don't know is that the way they liberate animals is by killing them.
What? The kill rate is 94.
From employees dumping dead animals.
Police staking out dumpster arrested Cook and Hinkle when 18 animals were found in the dumpster along with 13 more in their van, which was registered to PETA. Yeah, well,
Animal remains in
boys will be boys. I don't know, like what I have no information to go off here. Like, what's the premise here?
Random city dumpsters to stealing children's pets and euthanizing them. PETA starts to look more like
what the shit. Like, what's the end game? Like
a house rather than a sanctuary. And on top of that, they have built an entire brand around shocking the public with their sensationalized advertisements, comparing factory farming to slavery, animal agriculture to the Holocaust, and routinely creating campaigns so extreme that even fellow vegans and animal rights activists have a hard time supporting them. PETA's desperation for attention has gotten so bad that they even resort to calling out video games for their portrayal of animals when they literally couldn't be any more harmless. And for a company that's called People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, what they actually do to them will horrify. In June of 2005, a troubling discovery was made behind a local grocery store in North Carolina. Employees...
Horatio, no, what is that? Horario de atención adultos de mayores de... Please tell me this isn't in my... Okay. Okay, I'm not one of those people who thinks like people shouldn't learn different languages, but it does feel like the backbone of cooperation kind of is language, right? So maybe I'm an English supremacist for saying this, but I think people who live in America should probably learn English. If you want to have a culture that can cooperate, like communication is a big part of that. Learn English already. I know just enough Spanish to probably know when someone's insulting me. Or to make it awkward if you're trying to talk about something weird around me. So that's about my extent. I'd like to learn more, but again, I still think people should learn English if they live here.
Reported that
even though that's probably total fascist talking point.
Every Wednesday, they would discover the remains of countless dead animals inside the dumpster behind the store. The authorities were contacted and an investigation took place. Officers took note of 2 PETA employees unloading black trash bags full of animal remains into the dumpster. The police intervened and discovered 18 animal carcasses in the dumpster and another 13 inside of the van. Adria Hinkle and Andrew Cook were arrested and faced 30...
Oh, so one of them was actually a woman. I don't know if that makes it better or worse.
1 total felony charges for animal cruelty, as well as 8 misdemeanor charges for improper disposal of dead animals. PETA CEO and co-founder...
How are you supposed to dispose of dead animals?
Ingrid Newkirk claimed that the 2 employees were tasked with bringing the animals to PETA headquarters to be euthanized, although could not clarify why they had been dropping off the remains in the dumpster. The 2 managed to avoid jail time. They were cleared of the felony charges of animal cruelty and forced to pay a small fine.
This is in 2007?
For littering. That's right, littering. But it didn't really matter what the courts decided, because for many, this was a chilling revelation that couldn't be ignored. The country's most notorious animal rights organization was animals. But how could this be? Well, it turns out that it was always a core part of their ideology. The unfortunate news is that this video is heavily censored to abide by YouTube's community guidelines. This content is by no means meant to glorify the subject matter, but rather to document and educate. However, if you'd like to watch the fully uncensored and ad-free version of this video, as well as all of my future uploads,
you know, I can't say I was really imagining what his hair was look like, but I didn't imagine it looked like that. practically a ginger, at least beard-wise. I don't know if his hair is probably just more brown or dirty red.
You can do so on my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. And as always, thanks for the support. In 1972, Ingrid Newkirk was a meat-eating college student living in Poolesville, Maryland. After her next-door neighbor suddenly moved out, a dozen cats were left behind. They found solace in her backyard and began reproducing at a rapid rate. Overwhelmed by the responsibility, Ingrid took the strays to a nearby animal shelter in hopes of finding them permanent homes. But when she found out that the shelter had euthanized all of the strays she brought in, she snapped. This was the moment that Ingrid Newkirk was radicalized, and she began her crusade against animal cruelty. She began working at the very same shelter in hopes of making a difference in protecting the animals. However, she became witness to unspeakable acts.
John is kicking the dogs and putting them into the sorry. Or I would say they are stepping on the animals and crushing them like grapes, and they don't care. That seems creepy. / cruel / evil.
Of abuse from
I'm no softy necessarily. Well, maybe I'm a little bit of a softy, but I like dogs, and I don't like to. I don't know. I've heard the phrase that people who treat animals that way probably aren't that good with people either.
Other staff members, to the point where she felt that
I don't know if it's exactly the same thing, but it's not mutually exclusive, shall we say.
Employees took pleasure in the animals. She said, "In the end, I would go to work early before anyone got there, and I would just kill the animals myself, because I couldn't stand to let them go through that. I must have killed 1,000 of them, sometimes dozens every day." Now, this quote by itself sounds insane, but many people support Ingrid in this situation because euthanizing these animals saved them from suffering the abuse of potentially sadistic humans. This logic would become ingrained in the foundation of PETA, but it introduces a difficult ethical dilemma, and that's that PETA feels like they get to decide whether or not another living creature's life is worth preserving. In 2024, PETA took in 3,317 animals and euthanized 2,213.
That's a thing that happened.
In 2020.
I don't know what is, again, I don't know what I was expecting. Different thing than the air, but I don't know what I was expecting, but I would have expected that they would have some sort of animal farm somewhere.
They took in 2,854 and euthanized 1,684. Approximately 2 out of every 3 animals taken in by PETA during this time were killed, while the national average for other shelters remains at only 8%. This is a massive outlier. On the surface, it almost seems like PETA is eager to kill these animals, while the average shelter is more committed to prolonging their animals' lives and eventually finding them homes. PETA operates what it describes as a shelter of last resort. But real quick, I just want to talk about how it's becoming harder than ever to keep your online data secure from information like addresses, phone numbers, and even social security, people search sites, and even commercial databases. The process is fully automated for hundreds of one step further with their custom removals with Incogni. Go to incogni.com/PatrickCc and use code PatrickCc to get 60% off annual plans. Link
don't know if it's still good, but there you go.
In the description. Thanks, Incogni. Many no-kill shelters will reject taking in animals with their limited admission policies. Sometimes it's because the facility doesn't have enough space to keep the animals.
Hence the no-kill thing. It feels like that would necessarily mean that things are more crowded as a general rule.
Times they simply refuse the strays because of their low chances for adoption. As a result, limited admission facilities will always maintain a low kill rate and high replacement rate. PETA takes in every single animal that is brought to them, regardless.
Yeah. And you would think of that as being a positive thing, but yeah, it might not be a exactly positive thing.
Of their health, age, or adoptability, leading to far higher death rates and sparse adoption numbers. This issue becomes even more complicated when you consider just how many strays live in America and how finding all of them homes is quite literally impossible. It's estimated that the number of feral cats in the United States is in the tens of millions, and they are all reproducing at a rapid rate. Estimates say that a single cat and her offspring could spawn 370,000 cats in just 7 years.
Sweet glory. I don't know. That's at what point did they become an invasive species? I'm just saying, we don't want to think of dogs as, especially domesticated ones, as being that way, but, I guess feral cats might be a different question.
Millions of strays are taken in by shelters every single year, and even the most generous adoption rates still see hundreds of thousands of animals without homes. Some of them are just too old, sick, injured, or feral to be domesticated, meaning that if they don't die on the streets, they'll live the rest of their lives suffering inside of a cage, which is why many, especially PETA, look at euthanasia as the only viable option. PETA also frequently refers to animals as if they are equivalent to humans. They use terms like speciesism and human supremacy.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of a human supremacist. And maybe wouldn't all species technically view their species as being, well, as being the most important one, especially with regards to themselves? Like, I feel like that is kind of the way of things. Like, because you connect the most with humans, yeah, they're the most important ones to you. And to be fair, like, a good degree of responsibility has to do with one's understanding of the problem. I understand humans better than other species, so logically, my logic is undeniable.
To criticize others that believe that humans are inherently more valuable than other forms of life, which sounds like what you'd expect from an animal rights activist until you remember how many animals they kill. Critics argue that's like the nation's largest nursing home claiming to value elderly people above all else while routinely deciding which residents would be.
Oh. What is with this guy's face? It looks strange to me. I don't know if this eye is literally just lower than the other one or what. It's unfortunate. It doesn't look terrible, but his eye, like his right eye here, his right, not mine. His right eye seems lower than the other.
Better off dead because their remaining years might involve suffering. Most people would find that logic horrifying. Even if the intentions were compassionate, we'd still question whether any organization should have that much authority over who gets a chance to keep living and who doesn't. And as a get rid of animals. Also found themselves in controversy for being a bit too eager to get rid of animals, like in the case of Maya the Chihuahua in 2014. After receiving a call to gather feral dogs and cats in a local trailer park in McCormick County, Virginia, 2 PETA employees found an unattended Chihuahua named Maya. The workers collected the dog, believing it was a stray, and euthanized her later that day. In actuality,
that's a pretty quick turnover.
The dog belonged to a 9-year-old girl who had received Maya as a Christmas present. To make matters worse, the employees had not followed PETA's standard operating procedures where they are supposed to wait 5 days after capture to euthanize, which ultimately resulted in a $49,000 settlement to be paid out to the family. But this situation leaves you to wonder, how many times has this happened and gone unnoticed? How many families are under the belief that their pet ran away from home when in actuality they were abducted and killed by PETA without a chance to return? In 2008, the Center of Consumer Freedom petitioned Virginia's Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to reclassify PETA to a slaughterhouse. Their petition cited PETA.
Okay. Well, I would say kind of astonishing or shocking, but maybe not unwarranted either, given the information.
PETA's 2006 adoption numbers, which showed that they only had managed to find homes for 12 out of the 3,061 animals they had taken in. The rest—
What the Harry? That's hard, like, that's crazy to see on paper.
Were unfortunately euthanized, meaning that animals taken in by PETA had a less than 3% survival rate. It is absurd to classify PETA as a humane society when its employees are slaughtering nearly every companion animal they bring in. PETA has killed over 17,000 pets since 1998.
Again, I wouldn't consider myself like an animal rights activist, but that is unsettling in the extreme.
Given the group's astonishing habit of killing adoptable dogs and cats with such ruthless efficiency, it's only fair that the state of Virginia refer to PETA as a slaughterhouse. Now, to be fair, most people can understand that animal shelters are forced to make difficult moral decisions every day, but PETA makes it incredibly hard to give them the benefit of the doubt when so much of their public image is built around provoking outrage, which goes all the way back to the early 90s when they collaborated with country singer-songwriter K.D. Lang to create their Meat Stinks campaign.
Hi, I'm Katie Lang and this is Lulu. We're with the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We all love animals, but why do we call some pets and some dinner? Meat stinks, and not just for the animals, but for human health and the
I immediately don't trust this one.
environment.
This became particularly controversial as Lang was born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which had a vibrant cattle ranching industry. She was banned from 30 local radio stations, and a sign in her hometown identifying it as the home of Katie Lang was burned to the ground. Just in case you thought them Canadians were nice. Drink water. She was also disavowed by a handful of local public officials. Alberta's Minister of Agriculture said, "It is extremely unfortunate that she has decided to side with the animal rightists. There's a certain feeling of betrayal. We have supported KD fairly well in Alberta." That being said, the publicity also brought KD massive success and attention to new fans that helped her album achieve gold status. It was here that PETA likely realized that controversy and negative press had a decent amount of benefits, and moving forward, causing outrage was their main strategy. One of their first major successes in this tactic was the "I'd rather go naked than wear fur" campaign. Originally, it involved two PETA staff members, Dan Matthews and Julia Sloan, walking outside of a fur expo in Tokyo, Japan, fully nude. This campaign later expanded to a campaign where all kinds of messaging to make headlines. In the late 90s, PETA set its sight on McDonald's, advertising unhappy meals and calling the restaurant chain McCruelty. Activists would stand outside McDonald's locations handing
I don't know. It feels like there are people who come at this from... They almost come at it from their perspective of the world is a very nice place. Like, nature is your friend. And it just isn't. Like, I guess I don't know about, like, industrialized farming or whatever the crap. But you do understand that, like, take coyotes, for example. They will literally pull a deer down and eat it alive. I feel like most of the people, or like if it's a halfway decent farm, animals being born, raised, and living on farms, is not an entirely bad way to spend their lives, comparatively to living in the wild and dying in the wild, starvation or old age or whatever the crap. It is quite humane. That's my hot take.
out fake Happy Meal boxes redesigned to look almost identical to the real thing, but the packaging featured illustrations of an evil Ronald McDonald holding a knife surrounded by blood splatters to make him look more like a murderer. The goal was to hijack one of the most recognizable brands in the world and force customers to associate a trip to McDonald's with the realities of factory farming, and their
like, come on, man. Kids? Like, I don't know. I suppose I understand the logic, but it feels like, just generally speaking, could we not kind of all agree that, as a general rule, principled position, don't go after kids with your marketing.
strategy was effective, with McDonald's promising to improve the conditions of their factory farms for
that's, I suppose, good, at least.
The sake of the animals. Other chains like Burger King and Wendy's followed suit with their own respective campaigns. But not all of PETA's campaigns were this successful, and in their relentless pursuit of attention, they occasionally crossed lines that even some of their supporters couldn't defend. In 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested for murdering 17 different men. The story made national headlines for Dahmer's unspeakable actions, going as far as to abuse his victims both before and after their deaths, as well as eating the flesh from their corpses. Not even a month after the arrest, PETA began leaning into the tragedy for their campaign. They published advertisements
never let a tragedy go to waste, so they say.
That looked like they were recounting Dahmer's crimes, victims being dragged away, ignoring as they cried for help, dismembered, and ultimately eaten. Then after walking readers through the horror, PETA revealed they weren't talking about Jeffrey Dahmer at all. They were talking about cows, pigs, and chickens, and asking people to become vegetarians. Critics believed it was a
I don't know.
Major stretch to compare a sadistic serial killer to farming, and that they were capitalizing off a national tragedy for their own personal gain. They imitated a similar strategy in 2002 with Robert Pickton, a serial killer who victimized 15 women.
I feel like this type of thing can't help but You know, I see the same thing with regards to like movies in Hollywood or whatever the crap. I think most people forget that when you're trying tough love, the love has to come first. Like you can take being kind of ticked off or being sat down and given a very strict kind of message from someone you care about and someone who cares about you, someone who you trust. But when someone who you don't know at all comes out and starts saying this type of stuff, like in a type of sanctimonious, preachy, and or you're a bad person if you don't agree with me type of way, it's just like I don't think it really helps their cause, put it that way.
And stored their remains in the freezer on his personal pig farm. PETA saw these serial killers and factory farmers as one and the same, and anyone who felt remorse for the
factory farming, that's what I was thinking, unindustrialized, but maybe it's kind of the same thing, I don't know. Factory farming.
The human victims, but not animals, PETA saw them as hypocrites. This strategy
That you know, plants can't feel. I've heard ideas that plants kind of have some level of awareness or some crap. So, you know, hey. Also, fun fact, plants are alive pretty much until you boil them. I think so, anyways. Well, in theory, I think you can literally, like, plant parts, like, what's it? Potatoes. You know, you plant potatoes, you literally cut them up after you dug them up out of the ground and you plant them. So I'm just saying, how cruel is that?
Became particularly egregious in 2003 with their infamous Holocaust on Your Plate campaign, funded by an anonymous...
Again, that works, like, this type of message maybe works if it's someone you care about and or trust, but like the type of over-the-top sanctimonious ticking off of individuals, yeah, I don't know if it really works for the people writ large.
Jewish donor, PETA placed 8 large signs on city streets depicting animals inside slaughterhouses to the emaciated and tortured prisoners of Nazi-run concentration camps. The Anti-Defamation League, an advocacy group meant to combat anti-Semitism, described the comparison as inappropriate and insensitive. The issue should stand on its own merits, rather than rely on inappropriate comparisons that only serve to trivialize the suffering.
To be fair, everyone these days compares everything to Nazism. Like, they even called Jews Nazis for the whole Palestine thing, so... Only the beginning, I suppose.
Of 6 million Jews and others who died at the hands of the Nazis. To PETA and its supporters, the campaign was not disrespectful because they believe that animals and humans are equals, so they don't see the difference between humans slaughtering millions of animals every year or humans committing genocide. But most people just don't see the world that way, which doesn't mean that they support animal cruelty.
Yeah, that's like, I don't think anyone really likes, well, at least any but the most perverse of individuals really likes seeing animals in pain, per se. But I also don't think most people would see them as being, like... I would think there would be some degree of love lost with regards to intraspecies relationships as opposed to interspecies. I'm saying that right. Intraspecies being between species versus interspecies between members of the same species. Like, in theory, you should, unless you're some sort of misanthropist, you should be able to connect more with people. You should sympathize more with people. And I'm like, maybe this is a very Christian thing to say, but I tend to think that people are different, perhaps fundamentally so, from animals. They're not the same. They're not the same thing.
Many normal people actually strongly oppose unnecessary suffering and believe animals deserve protection and humane treatment. Yes, even those who eat meat. At the same time, they still view human life as unique. If forced to choose between saving a person and saving an animal, most would choose the person. It's in our DNA. PETA often treats any distinction between human life and animal life as a form of hatred towards animals. Then again, this type of nuanced discussion doesn't pair well when they are trying to advertise, which is why their relentless
like, I feel like it's kind of infeasible position. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to run out into the wilderness and try to stop carnivores from eating herbivores? Maybe there's some things you can do. Like, no, even the notion of vegetarianism. Like, there's a whole host of health issues. Like, like, do you just, oh no, the people who can't survive on only vegetarian stuff, or we can just let them die? Like a great culling of humanity, destroying all the, like, well, it's just a, I don't know. Maybe at the very least you could say people like this are well-meaning, but they seem to be utter idealists of the highest order. Very, it's not a very grounded perspective in my mind. Anyways, you guys can check out the rest of it if you like. PETA Deserves Their Failure by PatrickCc. And